Hello, I'm Eric Holdeman, and this is Disaster Zone, a show about emergencies and disasters that can happen anywhere and at any time. Our topic today is about the potential for a worldwide shortage of coffee beans in the future. What could be more of a disaster than that? And my guest today is Erika Koss, Assistant Dean for the College of Social Sciences and Humanities at Northeastern University in Boston. She also teaches in the writing program where her course focuses on poetry, censorship, and human rights. Erika holds degrees in nutrition, English, literature, and political science. And most importantly, for the first part of our show, she is the creator and curator of the popular series, The World in Your Cup, Conversations on the Politics and Culture of Coffee. And Erika, it's the longest introduction I've ever given, but you're an academic, so very well. Great to have you here on the show.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
All right. And we're going to be talking about really two different topics, both centered around resilience, and we'll talk about sustainability. The first part's about this coffee thing that everybody's worried about now that we know there's a shortage, but then there's another academic program going to be offered here in Seattle, and we'll cover that in the second half of the show. Mm-hmm. So you told me over lunch and previously that we might not have coffee in 20 to 30 years. How is that possible? How could we get to that point?
Well, I think you're right to say that it would be a big disaster, and I think it's a global disaster from two different points of view. All of the world's coffee is produced in the coffee belt between the lines of latitude and longitude. So most of those are what the UN designates as the least developed countries. And then most of the world's coffee is consumed by the US and Europe. So it will be a disaster in two different ways if we don't have coffee, because we're so dependent on it here in the global north. But it will affect the livelihoods of millions of people around the world if things don't change.
Okay, and what would cause coffee beans to go away?
Well, there's two main challenges, and they both fall under the area of sustainability. One has to do with all of the climate challenges. A lot of the weather-related hazards, droughts, hurricanes, floods, rainfall that at different times of a harvest might be too much or too little, as well as a host of coffee-related diseases that are wiping out coffee harvests.
And these are new diseases?
You know, some of them are getting worse because of the temperature increase. So things like La Roya, coffee rust, which is wiping out harvests mostly in Latin America, or things like it's a potato defect in coffee that is wiping out harvests in East Africa. So combined, all of these are all climate-related hazards and challenges.
Okay.
But then there's also the human challenge, which has to do with all of the hands and all of the people through a complex supply chain of actors who, you know, there's so much economic inequity. And then there's also a lot of youth migration because families are not able to always sustain their livelihoods. So the children are going to cities for education and jobs.
Grew up in northern Illinois where the average farm was 160 acres, and dairy farming and that. And now you've got these major corporations doing that in lieu of the family farmer. So is coffee being harvested primarily by these family farmers, or is it moving to more of a corporate setting?
That's a great question, and it's a complicated one actually, because it depends on what country you look at and what part of the industry you would consider. But most of the coffee is coming from smallholder family farms, usually not more than 10 hectares of land. So
okay, you gotta give an idea what we don't talk in hectares much on the Disaster Zone show. So how about what's a hectare and an acre? You know?
Right. So, you know, it's not a lot of land, let's put it that way, okay? Not a lot of trees. And coffee trees are they take a lot of care, they take a lot of love and need a lot of, they need a perfect altitude, they need, you know, really the right amount of water, the right amount of soil. And so, you know, these smallholder farmers often need to come together in cooperatives in order to compete in the global market.
Okay, so it's a coffee tree, not a coffee bush.
Yes, well,
I always think of Juan Valdez picking beans. I mean, on that commercial for Folgers or whatever it was, and it seemed like it was down low, more of a bush than a tree.
Yeah, those coffee ads were very memorable.
Yes. So, are there trees?
Yeah, they're trees. Yeah, and they take 3 to 5 years to bear fruit. So that's part of why when a hurricane, for example, or droughts come, it's very pernicious because it takes a long time then for another harvest of the coffee cherries to bear fruit.
Okay. And you say cherries. I mean, does it look like, when you say cherry, does it look like a cherry as we might know it here in the United States? A Bing cherry? I don't know.
Yeah, similar. Or sometimes they look to me a little bit like cranberries or even wine. They're very beautiful trees. And then inside is what we think of as the coffee bean. There's a big film of mucus that is around that.
You're making it sound better and better all the time, but yes.
But that's, part of the supply chain is that there are all these different steps from soil to tree to the cherry, to how a farmer would get that mucus off, so then it becomes these coffee beans as we might see it in a coffee cafe.
Well, it's just interesting, reading your kind of bio, poetry, English literature, coffee. How did you come to be a coffee expert based on, or interested in coffee?
Well, what started it actually was reading Isak Denison's book, Out of Africa. Karen Blixen was her real name, and I think probably some of your viewers may have seen the movie Out of Africa. And so I was reading that as a teenager in California with parents who didn't drink coffee, and then in college had the opportunity to go to Kenya and started drinking coffee for myself in Kenya. Later I became a barista, and then skip ahead years later.
Hasn't everybody been a barista, I guess?
Yeah, well, it was a long time ago. I think now being a barista, there are World Barista Championships actually that are happening this week. So it's a whole other level of what it means to be a barista now. But they're a very important part of the supply chain because most Americans are receiving coffee at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you told me earlier that people drink more coffee outside the home than they do brewing it at home.
Yeah, more Americans are buying their coffee at a cafe or a restaurant than brewing it at home.
Okay. And so talk a little bit more about this supply chain aspect, because that's where sustainability and that aspect of resilience fits into this.
Sure, yeah. Well, the word sustainability actually comes from the verb to hold. So, quite literally, when we're holding a cup of coffee, as I see it, we're holding a whole chain of people and issues right there in our hand. So we're connected to this chain in ways that we may not always imagine when we're just drinking coffee. So that's part of why I'm so passionate about it, because I really want to bring that awareness to consumers to think about how our coffee choices matter. And how that connects to resilience has a lot to do with what we were talking about before about the climate challenges and the human challenges. Because there's a lot of energy in the coffee industry right now around what it means for coffee farmers to be resilient and to consider what this should and could look like for farmers.
Okay, and you talk about climate. Well, certainly irrigation for some is a solution to a lack of rainfall. Are any coffee farms, I guess orchards, I don't know, since they're trees, are they called farms or orchards? Or
farms.
Farms.
Yeah. They're often in the mountains.
Yeah, but is there irrigation there, or it's really natural rainfall?
Yes, well, I'm not a scientist, Eric. So, I'm looking at this from the standpoint of human rights and the politics and the policy of all this. But I do know that there are many scientists who are thinking very deeply about all of these soil and, even in terms of the resilience of different coffee varietals and what that could look like in the future.
So, what's being done at different levels? Whether the countries of origin or throughout this whole supply chain, right down to the consumer or the... the vendors?
Well, it's an exciting moment in the coffee industry right now, and a lot of my work and my attention has been focused on the specialty coffee industry because that's where I see so much of the change and so much of the energy moving forward. So there's a new initiative actually, which is a global collaborative of many different actors in the coffee industry, and it's called the Sustainable Coffee Challenge, and it's led by Conservation International. Starbucks is also a partner in that coffee challenge, and the idea is for coffee to be the first sustainable agricultural product, and all of this is in response to COP21 in December 2015.
COP21 is?
That was when the UN climate negotiations came together for that climate agreement in Paris in December 2015. So it's very exciting to see that the coffee industry has really come together to be even more collaborative and really consider what all these partnerships could look like.
Okay.
So I'm just one person in that movement toward that positive change.
Okay, and certainly, you know, we're home for Starbucks here in Seattle, and that's where's Seattle? I mean, are they very much in a leadership position on this, or are they part of a larger movement?
Starbucks is a leader in coffee, so I think everybody is always paying attention to what Starbucks is doing.
Okay.
And you know, right here in Seattle, there's the Reserve Roastery, which is a really beautiful place to go, actually, because you can see how the beans are roasted. And I think a lot of people have never seen beans being roasted before. So there's a lot of movement forward.
Okay. Today, if you ask me, well, who are the giants in the coffee business, we would think of Starbucks. Is there another, you know, entity that you would call out that people would recognize? The big actors in the coffee business?
Well, there's a lot of corporations who are really in control of most of the beans around the world. But in specialty coffee, which is where I'm focused, you know, it's Starbucks. And I also am really mindful of a lot of the organizations like Fair Trade USA, Rainforest Alliance. There are many different direct trade, small coffee roasters who are doing a lot of great work. And so, you know, those are really the beans and the organizations that I'm focused on.
If the public's interested in this, are they, you know, I don't know if there's a call to action where they as individuals could help, you know, address some of these issues. I don't know how they address climate change, but, you know, the individual actions there, but what could people do?
Well, it's a great question because climate change is such a huge topic. Of course, it has to do with the whole globe, and I think it's easy to get lost in the terms and in this feeling that we can't make a difference. But I really do see that there is, you know, that every purchase matters, that we spend a lot of money on coffee, whether it's beans or, you know, as a cup. And if we all made different choices as consumers, that would have a ripple effect. You know, the choices we make in America and Europe do affect women and children and families in the global South.
Okay.
So, yeah, that would be my call to action for your listeners.
Well, very good. Well, we're about halfway through. So for you folks at home, this means we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about Northeastern University on a program on disaster resilience and a certificate program. But we're also, before we start that, we're going to talk about the Devil's Brew, coffee and the Pope. And so we'll be right back with that.
In the event of a catastrophe, you need to know what to do to make it through. By preparing now, you and your family will have a better chance of surviving when a catastrophe happens. Here are 3 tips to get you started. Have an emergency plan with meeting places and an out-of-area contact. Prepare a supply kit for your family and pets that includes what you need to survive for 7 to 10 days. And be prepared to help each other. Start now and take the first step to protect the ones you love. For more information, visit makeitthrough.org or find us on Facebook.
Hi, I'm Eric Holdeman, and this is Disaster Zone. And if you're just joining us today, my guest is Erika Koss, the Assistant Dean for College of Social Sciences and Humanities at Northeastern University. And in the first part of the program, Erika, we were talking about coffee, and we're going to finish that discussion, then talk about this certificate program you have at Northeastern being offered here in Seattle. But to finish the coffee discussion, why has it been called the Devil's Brew?
So I've been trying to find the actual quote for this, but the legend has it that Pope Clement VIII in 1605 was the one who actually made it possible for us all to be drinking coffee now.
He ordained it as permissible.
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Well, when we were in the Activated Emergency Operations Center here in King County, I used to tell people we can make 1,200 cups of legally addictive stimulant an hour. Yeah. So, very good. So thanks for that first part on coffee, but I know you're here in Seattle talking about Northeastern program, a certificate on resilience and security. So how about explain what that is all about? And just a little bit about Northeastern too.
Sure. So Northeastern University is in Boston, but in the last couple of years, we've actually expanded to 4 different graduate campuses. Okay. And so we have one here in Seattle. It's in the South Lake Union neighborhood. And so there have been several great master's degree programs offered in Seattle. The most popular one has been the Master of Science in Computer Science. There's close to 200 students who will be starting in that program this fall.
And being in South Lake Union, the center of all biotechnology and software development, that's a great location to be.
Yeah. And but I've been here representing my college, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities College of Northeastern. And in that capacity, in our Department of Political Science, we've started a master's degree in Security and Resilience Studies a couple years ago. And so in Boston, we have that as a full master's degree. But what I've been doing and my colleagues have been doing is we are launching a graduate certificate for that Security and Resilience Studies degree. And that certificate will be offered here in Seattle this fall for the first time.
Explain what a certificate is. I mean, what's going to be involved for a certificate program? Sure.
So it will be 4 courses, 12 units. There will be 2 courses this fall. Those courses are Security and Resilience Policy and Counterterrorism. And then in the spring, there will be 2 other courses. One will be Cybersecurity, and then the other one will be, there'll be an elective option. So it could be either Resilient Cities or Homeland Security, Law and Public Policy, or International Security.
Okay, and how are the courses being delivered?
So they're hybrid. Most of the curriculum will be delivered through an online platform.
I'm thinking battery and gasoline, but no.
Yeah, so. I know the words are sometimes defined a little differently in higher ed. Yes. So what we're meaning by hybrid in this case is that most of the work and the curriculum will be through an online platform. Taught by an instructor who will be based here in the Pacific Northwest. Okay. There will be 2 in-person opportunities though in the fall and 2 in the spring, because we're finding that even with all of this focus on online education, that students still want that human contact with the professor and with the students.
With one another.
Yeah, to network and get to know each other.
Okay, so we've been throwing around that word resilience, and on the first part of the show we talked about sustainability, which sometimes sustainability and resilience are used, in similar ways when they can mean something different. So how would you define, or is this program defining resilience, and where do you see it different from sustainability?
Well, I really love the word resilience. Just as a word, it comes from the Latin root to jump. And there's actually a story, I don't know if you know this because I know you know Latin also.
Ambition.
Yeah.
Not just German. But go ahead.
But because it's this idea that pirates would actually jump from ship to ship. So that was the word salir, that it would, and so, when you have resilience and you think to bounce back, to spring back from, in this case we're talking about a hazard, whether that hazard is man-made or whether it's coming from natural disasters.
Hazards,
Yeah, so both, the hazards that we think we can prevent or the ones that we definitely know we can't prevent. So resilience is what do we do in in the wake of that.
Yeah.
We know that all of these different challenges and hazards will come to us. So how do we adapt and mitigate and recover from these?
Ooh, used all the right words in talking about that. And, you know, it's just interesting. I think of resilience as everything you do when all your prevention, mitigation aspects didn't work. Then your ability to get back in business, if you're a business, or have your family back whole, united with incomes and that, it's a resilience factor in investing in that. So
yeah, I think for cities, for corporations, for governments, right, for families, all of these ways that once a disaster strikes, how quickly, if ever, because sometimes communities don't always recover so swiftly, right?
Yeah.
So, but the idea would be, to have that happen quickly so that everyone can get back to the natural rhythms of life.
Okay. And, who do you think you're targeting for your student body for this? I mean, what's, I don't know, the profile, if that's the right word?
Yeah. Well, we would love to have people from the Seattle region, but also from, around the Pacific Northwest, because we only have these 2 Saturday requirements in the fall and spring. So, we're hopeful that people would be able to fit that into their busy lives and into their jobs and families. We would love to see mid-professional people with leadership experience who perhaps just want a deeper education into the systems and the way of thinking about public policy from, a broader perspective. We have faculty who are really worldwide experts in security and resilience, leading this program and teaching in our programs.
Okay. And
So,
one of those people I know is Stephen Flynn, one of the guys I look up to and admire. I want to say his book was Edge of Disaster.
Yeah,
Might have
that's
been.
right.
Written right around the time of 9/11, probably shortly thereafter, published. He might have been working on it beforehand and that, but I think he brings a lot of credibility for me, knowing that Steve's involved in this to the program.
yeah, Steve is actually one of the original directors of the program, and now he's one of the co-directors along with Daniel Aldrich, who is also a leader in especially societal resilience.
Okay. And talk about the makeup of this potential student body. You have to offer it. What I've seen, I hear from a lot of people wanting to get an emergency management field, and if they're younger, I say, hey, get your bachelor's degree in that. But certainly there's a lot of mid-career changers still in the emergency management, homeland security workforce, whether they were fire, police, perhaps military, and they don't have any education in emergency management. Now they're in this field, and I talked about also here that where emergency management, security, risk management, and technology are kind of all mushing together. They're separate disciplines, but they're coming together. I would think this would be a great way for a working professional to be able to have enough time to be doing their job and then still increase their knowledge and add to their ability to deal with the issues as they come up.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you mentioned military, because we would also love to have military officers and veterans or spouses in this program. Northeastern has invested quite a lot in the Yellow Ribbon program, and so we really would welcome veterans and spouses into the program too.
So is this a veterans VA benefit eligible type of course?
Yeah, yeah.
So they could use their education benefits towards this.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, of course, I would want people to talk to our staff about, what that would look like. But yes, absolutely, there's opportunity to pursue that.
Well, just I was just talking to somebody last week who was talking about her spouse getting out of the military and didn't know what he wanted to do. And certainly when you're 2 to 3 years out, you can't wait till the last 6 weeks, last 6 months.
Right.
Kind of identify what you want to do. And if this is a field you're interested in, perhaps you already have a degree, this is a great way to go on beyond having what the Federal Emergency Management Agency has, a professional development series. It's online courses, pretty baseline. But here you could develop some real expertise and show knowledge in it. So I think that's a great target for you.
Well, we hope so. And I mean, the focus is, on an analysis of the systems and of the policy. And we're looking at this from, both our tenure track research faculty who are also practitioners. So it's that global experiential focus of Northeastern that I think is special about this program. And there's, of course, so many opportunities right here in the Seattle region for students to put that into practice.
Okay.
And the other thing, Eric, is that the certificate is just a starting point, because that can lead to 3 of our master's degree programs for any student who would want more.
Would fit right in.
That's right.
Okay. And so it's a 1-year program, also 2 courses in the spring, 2 courses in the fall. That last course has some options to it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, why not jump in? I mean, you got all these other master's programs. Why not just offer another master's in emergency management, homeland security, and why not do that? Why do the certificate? Because you're trying to target this particular audience, it's a little bit different than what other institutions are doing.
Well, for us right now, we are just starting with the certificate here in Seattle. The Seattle campus already has, many different other programs, and so we're hoping that this just enhances that portfolio.
Okay.
There is a fully online master's degree in Homeland Security through our other college at Northeastern, the College of Professional Studies.
Okay.
So if somebody knows that that's what they want and they need that online option, that's available as well.
Okay.
But for us, with the certificate, all of those courses will count for other degrees if that's something that a student wants.
Well, one last question. I get questions from people around the United States saying, Eric, which school should I attend? And the only advice, because I can't really endorse one not having attended them, I'd say, but go with a university that has a brick and mortar presence. It's one of the things I tell folks, versus some for-profit type of entity that's, perhaps provides the degree, but I think the brick and mortar has much more of an academic approach to their programs. But what differentiates Northeastern and what you're doing as opposed to these other programs?
There's so much exciting energy at Northeastern right now that, both in Boston and in this global network of other universities or other campuses. And, we've been a top 50 school now for the last 3 years, and it's just growing. We're hiring new faculty. There's so much research activity, but it's all based on experience. And for my college, which is College of Social Sciences and Humanities, we're thinking so seriously about what it means to be a leader in the experiential liberal arts. So the Security and Resilience program is one way for us to think about creating leaders for the future.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been terrific having you on the show, talk about those 2 pieces of coffee, Northeastern, and this cup is a souvenir for you to take when you drink your coffee at your desk, or when you go to Africa. Here, I probably don't want a packet for that, but think about disasters, resilience, sustainability, and good luck with developing the program here, and I look forward to following the progress.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes. And for you folks at home, this brings us to the close of our show today. Thanks for tuning in and learning more about what you and others can do to become better prepared for disasters, or more informed about a possible potential coffee shortage in our future. But remember, if you're going to get prepared for a disaster, today is a good day to start. Have a great day, and tune in again soon. Bye-bye.